Hey gun enthusiasts, welcome to Arms Be Good. Today we have a fun episode of Student Saturday planned. Why Student Saturday instead of Safety Saturday? Because we did Safety Saturday last week, and teaching safety is nice, but there's other things to learn. So today we're going to be learning about handguns, more specifically the difference between striker-fired and hammer-fired mechanisms. Now, for my two examples here, because I don't really have a modern striker-fired pistol, we're going to be using my 1913 Luger P08. It's, good enough. They haven't really changed that much striker-wise. Same basic concept. And in the same vein, to complement that, we'll be using my 1943 Walther P38 as well. Because it's our, my favorite hammer-fired weapon I have. Now before we get started, we're going to exercise some safety, as we should do every week. We're going to drop the mag, and then check the chamber, make sure there's no rounds in there. Now the reason we drop the mag before we check the chamber is because if you remember from our last video, that streamer that we were using as an example for why you should treat all guns like they're loaded, he racked it back before dropping the mag, and if you have something in the magazine and then you rack it back, you're making that chamber loaded. You're putting one in the pipe. So it doesn't matter if you drop the mag, the mag might be gone, but there's a round in the chamber. It will go off. Once, but it'll go off. So additionally, before we get started, we're going to take our hammer-fired weapon and put a little training laser in it, because generally it's not smart to dry fire weapons, but especially not a great idea for hammer-fired weapons. Don't ask me why, I haven't bothered looking it up yet, I just know you shouldn't. So now, what we have here is a double action, single action hammer-fired weapon. What that means is, double action is when you pull the trigger, and we've already confirmed that the magazine is out and the chamber is clear except for that little laser bit. Hammer fired, there's two actions taking place there. Double. When you pull the trigger, the hammer goes back and then it drops. With a single action or single action only, if you've seen like Wyatt Earp or any of those cowboy movies, you notice they go with the hammer. That's because in those, you pull the trigger as many times as you want, and then nothing will happen because that hammer is not engaged. So in a single action system, the hammer is dropped by the trigger in a single action. One thing. Trigger does one thing, drops the hammer. Double action, two actions, pulls the hammer back, then drops it. Single action, just drops the hammer. Now the hammer is really nothing more than a glorified weight. A weight that's under spring tension. So when this hammer is dropped, that little dot in there, that's the firing pin, that is struck. And upon that being struck, it pops out that little breech facing kind of, see right there, and strikes the back of your cartridge. That's the primer being hit. We'll do another video on the individual pistols and ammunition, breakdown of all the ammo types and stuff like that. We'll do that later on. But for now, we're just going to talk about how a hammer works. And that's pretty much it, man. Pull the trigger, trigger releases the hammer, hammer spring loaded, hammer slams into the firing pin slams forward, hits the primer of the cartridge goes off, boom, cartridge gets ejected, except in this case it won't happen. That's it. So the striker-fired mechanism, same basic principle. A spring is put under tension and the trigger releases the tension, causing the firing pin to strike the primer. Now, in this case, the striker is the firing pin. So when they say striker fired, they're just changing the name of the firing pin to striker. I couldn't tell you why. The spring is depressed back, but it carries the striker with it when that happens. So this is moving both the spring and the striker. So that way, when you pull the trigger, There's no hammer involved. You're just releasing the striker, allowing the spring to decompress and fly forward, strike the primer. Easy as that. Anyways, that'll probably bring us to a close on the specifics between hammer fired and striker fired. It's, once again, a quick recap. The hammer and hammer fired acts as a weight, spring-loaded weight. When the trigger's pulled, it slams down on the firing pin, hits the primer, ignites the cartridge. With a striker fired, racking the slide back primes the striker, and then when you pull the trigger, it releases the striker, causing the spring to lunge it forward, hit the primer, ignite the cartridge. Same basic thing for both. I mean, you know, it's going off. It's just, difference is one of them has something heavy hitting it, and the other it's doing it on its own power. Well, I'll about wrap it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you didn't, maybe there's something for the next one, maybe the last one. I don't know. If you liked it, I would appreciate a like, and if you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. Keep informed on what's going on. I will, in the future, on a Milsurp Monday, have either of these pistols. I'll do a field strip, a little about them, a little history lesson if you like. But until then, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next time.